Welcome everyone to today's Masterclass. I'm so excited to have you all on with us this afternoon. Again, my name is Shantae Moore. I am one of the certified financial educators here in with Evolve Financial Partners, and happy to be teaching you this class this afternoon. And before we really get started, I just want us to take a step back and think about what are we here for? We're here to really face the facts about our financial situation before you begin any type of process. Our goal isn't to give you a PhD in finance, but just to teach you the basics of how money works so that you can make smarter financial decisions about your money and wealth. This is that foundation. So let me move along here. And this is the How Money Works Masterclass Part 1. So this is where you are going to learn to stop being a sucker when it comes to your money. I'll be starting off the presentation. Like I said, we'll be here probably for the next hour or so. But financial literacy, it starts here. And during this presentation, you'll get to know the cast of characters from the How Money Works Stop Being a Sucker book. And if you've read the book, you've already been introduced. Everyone has a favorite or two. My personal favorite character is Dana. She's a mother, she has children. So I relate to her a lot in the commentary that she provides through the book, actually. But these characters, they're proof that there are no stupid questions when it comes to money. So I encourage you, take time to take out some notes. If you have the book, make notes in the book, but you definitely will be learning a lot today. And one thing I just want to start with is, the first choice that you have as we begin this course is very, very simple. Will you choose the mindset of a sucker, or will you learn to think like the wealthy? It is a choice. And the fact that you joined the class today, it's a sign that you're on the right track. And here's the great news. Here's the best part of everything. You do not have to be wealthy to think like the wealthy. You only need the knowledge. And by joining us on this presentation today, this is a great opportunity for you to gain that knowledge and the mindset. And one of our country's founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, he once said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. So we truly do salute you for taking the time to learn one of the most valuable life skills that you can develop. And you're going to be glad that you did. So, comedian W.C. Fields, he once said, it's morally wrong to allow a sucker to keep their money. And of course he was kidding. He was just making a joke. But it does prove one thing. If you don't understand how money works, you can end up as the butt of someone's joke. We're not here to make light of the crisis that a lot of us are experiencing. So we want, by you attending this class, we want to stop that today. And let me just put it out there. We know the word sucker, that it sounds insulting. Unfortunately, though, that's the best way that we can describe someone who can be taken advantage of, because you just don't know how things work. Not knowing how money works, it does suck. It can suck up your time, it sucks up your freedom, and it could eventually suck up your income. And that does suck. So there's an old saying, what we think about, we bring about. Your financial reality will largely depend on how your mind works when it comes to money. So, in today's Masterclass Part 1, my partners and myself, we're going to cover 5 basic concepts and strategies. And each concept is essential to the foundation required to start making financial decisions. And not just making financial decisions, but making those decisions with confidence. I can't tell you how many people, when they get educated and that light bulb goes off, they're confident. They know exactly what they need to do to start taking action to get themselves on track financially. So we hope that you'll have that confidence after attending today's masterclass. So today, we all right now are experiencing an extremely devastating global medical crisis. And we know how hard that can be. And when you think about it, when you compare it to not knowing about money, that's just the economic version of a global crisis, a global pandemic. And it affects about 5 billion people in the world who are considered illiterate when it comes to their money. And the financial devastation it has caused individuals all over the world is immeasurable, and some of it is intentional. And the financial industry, they don't teach people about money. They're happy with you being a sucker and not being educated and not doing anything better because they're the ones who make the money. And we want to stop that. We want to change that. Our company is committed to changing that mindset and that perception. So let's think back on 1920. I wasn't alive then, but if we look back into the year 1920, there would still be millions of adults in our nation who couldn't read. Couldn't read words, couldn't read books. And public education, of course, over the last 100 years has changed that. And we believe that this How Money Works Masterclass is public education for financial literacy. So, with this class, you will learn the building blocks, not only to earn more money, but to how to spend it, how to save it, but how to invest it. So, it's just like learning how to read. When you know how money really works, it will change how your financial story ends. And when I mentioned a few moments ago, you heard me say over 5 billion people in the world are considered financially illiterate, right? You probably wonder, well, what does that mean? So it just references the result of this survey. It was shocking results. In the study, only about 30% of people in the world are considered financially illiterate. I'm sorry, financially literate, meaning they know how money works. The study, how they did it was they used a simple quiz to reveal that most people from countries all over the world were unable to answer a few simple questions, not really hard questions, a few simple questions about money. And this class will teach you how to answer those questions and many more. And if you haven't taken the How Money Works challenge, talk to the person who invited you, and they'll share with you that question and see how you scored. But this class, again, we're going to teach you how to answer those questions. And, honestly, to just educate and teach people, that's why I teach this course. And I hope that's why you're here, because you just want to learn. And sometimes people look at, America as like the best in the world, which, in many regards we are. But our nation, when it comes to financial literacy, is not better off than the rest of the world. Financial illiteracy is our top economic crisis, too. Here in the USA, look at these numbers. Can you believe that almost half of Americans don't have enough to cover a $400 emergency? We saw that during this pandemic when everyone was going crazy waiting for stimulus checks just because they did not have enough money to make ends meet. People don't have enough money to make their student loan payments on time or to pay their credit cards or even really consider retiring. Sarah, our character here, she's right. These numbers, they hurt families, and it is hard to process. The doom and gloom. It's really hard to just accept that this is the reality for a majority of Americans. And then let's think about what happened this year in early 2020. Look at how many how many people are on unemployment. The stock market is just volatile. It's going up. It's going down. Those things have impacted so many people, and we know that the numbers are getting worse. We're not even through this pandemic yet. Like, we're still in it. But here's the good news. As I talk about all this doom and gloom, the good news is that for you and anyone else who's on this webinar who's taking this class, with knowledge and action, we can change these numbers. And we truly believe that this masterclass is your day one. This is your opportunity to reset, to create a new financial reality, a new mindset, and obviously a new financial future for yourself. So, according to the National Financial Educators Council, they did a recent survey. U.S. adults lost an average of $1,200 in 2018 because they don't know what they're doing with their money. 1 out of 5 lost $2,500. Again, it's like taking that stimulus check and setting it on fire. And this is, to me, this is daunting because I meet a lot of people who think they know what they're doing with their money, and they don't. They don't know that they're not investing it properly. They don't know that they're putting themselves to pay crazy amounts of taxes in the future or take on a lot of penalties. A lot of folks just don't know any better, and who can blame them? Like, if you think, like, for me, I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a very poor family. My mother and father didn't learn about finance. So how would they have taught me? Most adults, we learn through trial and error when it comes to managing our finances. And maybe you didn't grow up like me. Maybe you did grow up with, a financially stable household. But again, if your family and your parents were doing the same thing that everyone else was doing, did they really get ahead financially when they could have? So we hope again to shed some light on some of that information in today's presentation. And this is probably the funniest part to me. Angela always states, uh, we talk about how only 21 out of 50 states require high schools to teach at least one class in personal finance. And for those that don't, they barely scratch the surface with topics like balancing a checkbook. I mean, how many people, I know a lot of young people who don't even know how to write a check, how to sign their name on a letter, is beyond me. But because we don't learn it in school, and again, if we don't learn it from our parents, where would we learn? So it's not enough just to scratch the surface. What percentage of these schools teach sex education? That's one thing, a running joke in the office, Angela always says, we could figure that out. We could figure sex education out. But no one talks to us about personal finance. These schools teach lacrosse and journalism and all these other topics, but they don't talk about finances. Really, almost 50 out of 50 will teach those things, but not finances. And we can't make this up. These are actual numbers. It just doesn't make any sense that personal finance is not taught in school. And so because of that, most of our kids, they do believe that, as they get older, that a personal finance course would benefit them the most. I work with a lot of youth or people who are in education or some type of educator, and they always ask us, can we do workshops to talk to their youth? Absolutely. We believe, if you're 18 years old and you're entering the world and you're about to sign a paper to take on thousands of dollars in student loans that you have to repay and you have no clue what that document is. Those are things that we need to learn at a very young age. And it's just fine. It's really hard to find a course like this, that people can be educated and learn these concepts. And that's why we teach this master class. And that's why we give the book out. That's why we share the book with folks, because we believe I tell anyone who reads that book, if you read this book, you'll learn more about money than 99.9% of the population. So let's get back to that sucker cycle. Let's talk about this. Again, we want to be very realistic about what's happening in our world today. It's the trap of foolishly spending your money and then putting it in accounts that give you no type of interest. When you're trying to save it, we put it in low interest saving accounts, month after month, year after year, slowly sucking away your potential to be wealthy, slowly sucking away your potential to be free and in control. And every couple of weeks, the cycle repeats. We get paid, we go to the grocery store. Think about right now, unnecessary online purchases, more streaming subscriptions. Most people, they know how to earn money. They trade their time for money. Most people know how to spend it, but that's about it. What about other options? How do we save? How do we best maximize every single dollar we that we bring in? And it's time to break that sucker cycle. When we think about, the sucker, they work, they hand their paycheck to someone else who builds their own wealth with that sucker's money. So, and wait till you see what the numbers look like later on in the presentation. Little amounts can really add up over time and become big amounts. So I like how George says here, he's like, watch who you're calling a sucker. The average American doesn't make a whole lot of money. Yeah, of course. They know they feel trapped, but their spending says otherwise. I can't tell you how many people who say, oh, I'm broke and I'm living paycheck to paycheck. But then when I look at their budget, they're eating out, they're buying all these unnecessary things. And I'm like, no, you have the money, you're just spending it elsewhere. So take a look at this snapshot from the book. And some of these numbers might be a little different, because we've been staying home. Of course, we might be spending less on clothing and, ride sharing and coffee and events because we really can't do that right now. But a lot of people are spending more on other things like takeout. I know I'm guilty. I've been eating out a lot, and subscriptions and maybe even alcohol just because we're stuck at home and we really can't get anywhere. But again, this is the type of things that the average American will spend their money on. And so let's think about the consequences of that, and think of in the future, think of your retirement. I love this example, to think of it like an airplane. When you're flying an airplane, it needs both wings to fly, right? Think of that as in the same way when it comes to your retirement. Social Security and your 401k, if you're lucky to have either one of those, they can make up just one wing of the income that you plan to live on in retirement. And the other wing, that's really up to you. That's your responsibility. If you hope to live on at least 70% of your pre-retirement income, then you really need to be serious about what you put away. And your financial professional, whoever invited you to this webinar, they can help you decide what that number is, and exactly where to put it. And I'm in conversations like that every single day. I talk to my clients about, look, we can't depend on just Social Security on the 401k. We have to hold the rest of our retirement up with our own personal savings. So let's just look at how Americans, what they're doing right now when it comes to that second wing. This is just your typical average American. And no matter what generation you're a part of, first things first, we know that none of them are saving enough, not even close. And remember, the older you are, the less time you have. So you really have to put more away. And if you're younger, time is your greatest asset. So you're on the opposite end. But either way, whether you're a millennial, a Gen Xer, or a baby boomer, again, we know that these folks in general, and most of these generations, are not putting enough money away. And here's an example of that I want to talk about. And it'll just really just bring the light on shine the light on the numbers, and why there's a savings shortfall, why a lot of people are retiring with only one wing. So first of all, if you don't put enough aside each month and earn a good interest rate of return, that's how much your money is actually growing. Your savings can fall short, really putting your retirement income and whatever lifestyle you think you might have in retirement at risk. And depending on your shortfall, if you don't have enough money, you will have to re-enter the workforce. And if you don't have to re-enter the workforce, you'll probably have to cut back on your lifestyle, just to live on less money. Or we see a lot of people who are just moving in with their kids because they don't have enough money to sustain themselves. How does that sound? You see that shortfall, the gray area here between what you saved and how much you actually need. That should be the focus of every person that's on this webinar, and working with a financial professional to help you get help. We have to close that gap. And here's what this looks like when you close the gap. Your retirement savings goal is reached. This person here in this example, they will have a very reliable income in retirement because they know they save the right amount of money to get the best rate of return on their monies that they put aside. And that's necessary to reach the savings to make, retirement what they imagined it to be. I meet a lot of people who want to retire, and their goal is to travel the world and spend a lot of time with their grandkids. If that's what you imagine, you have to put in the personal savings to live that lifestyle. Or you could simply retire and live paycheck to paycheck and barely make ends meet. It's really your choice. What if we could even have enough money to where we could leave a legacy to our children? How does that sound? So when you really sit down and you work with your financial professional, you could really figure out what your numbers are, because every person's situation is totally different. And as I start to end my section here, as Steve Siebold said in this book, how in his other book, How Rich People Think, the wealthy, they really do think very differently than everyone else. Suckers, they accept their situation. They have thoughts, and their thoughts about money, it centers around fear. Their behavior around money, behavior around money centers on foolishness. The wealthy are completely opposite. Even though they face the same reality, they're living in the same pandemic as us, they just choose to have a different mindset. They see money in their future very differently. They think of, I have to gather as much knowledge as possible. I want to be excited about money. They look at things from and say, I have a bright future. I can be wealthy. Everything around me is an opportunity. And I truly believe that even though we're living this global pandemic, that instead of seeing it as a time of panic, we should truly see it as a time of opportunity. So thank you all. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to introduce our next presenter here, Francisco Nunez. He's been in the financial services industry for, oh my God, over 15 years, I believe. So funny. He actually started helping me when I became, a part of the group over here. A huge educator in the Latino community here in the Chicagoland area, one of my valuable friends and partners, a father, a husband. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you, Frank. Thank you all.
Wow, what a great intro. Shantae, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Perfect. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. I want to make sure I get a right start off with this. I know, we're talking about how money works and, being a sucker as far as finances go, but I feel like I'm a little bit of a sucker in regards to technology. So I'm still, learning how to use all this virtual stuff and sharing screens and things of that nature. But thanks very much for the intro. That was a great info what you just shared. And, I hope nobody on this call gets offended when we talk about in regards to being a sucker when it comes to your finances. Because I'm going to tell you a little bit personal story. Even though I grew up in a savings family, and I was told to go to school, and I did get a degree in accounting, and I worked in the accounting field for many years. Up until the point that I learned about how money works, I was a sucker basically almost my whole life. And one of the things that helped me stop being a sucker is learning this concept that I'm about to go over, which is the power of compounding interest. Once I learned how compounding interest can work in your favor, for me personally, I loved it so much that I actually got into the industry to help others learn how compounding interest could be a factor in their life and teach them exactly how money works. So what is compounding interest, right? Well, compounding interest is basically the potential of your money, right, being leveraged with compounding interest for it to be able to grow. So in simple definition, is interest working on interest, right? Here's Zoe, one of our characters in the How Money Works book, which is basically a young person who wants to learn exactly how compounding interest works, because since she's so young, she has so many time to make it work in her favor. So compound interest is definitely very magical. One of the early gentlemen that we learned from in regards to how money works is this gentleman here, John D. Rockefeller. I'm sure anybody has heard of the Rockefeller family and the amount of wealth that they built, right? So Rockefeller was one of the first self-made billionaires in history. And when he passed away, his net worth was $340 billion in today's money. Well, how wealthy is that? Well, just think about it, right? We've heard of some wealthy people that are currently alive right now, like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and another gentleman named Jeff Bezos. Well, if you combine these three gentlemen's wealth, right, it's still not enough to beat John D. Rockefeller's wealth. He's still wealthier than those three gentlemen combined. So you'll know exactly how wealthy he actually passed away, the wealth that he passed on. But one of the things or the life lessons that Rockefeller taught basically the investing world is when he was a very young boy, right? He actually was able to save up about $50, right, from working as a farmer, and he was able to save this money up, and $50 and then equates to about $1,500 today. His mom actually told him, why don't you lend that $50? She's not going to use it to the local farmers because they needed to start up their crops. So he did that. He made negotiations with the one farmer and lent him $50, and the farmer promised to pay him 7% interest right over the course of 1 year. So 1 year later, the farmer paid John D. Rockefeller back his $50 plus $3.50 of interest. But during that same time period, Rockefeller still worked. He actually worked for 3 days digging up potatoes, right? And he made a whopping $1.12, right? So once he logged in the journal in regards to how much money he made from lending money and how much money he made from working money, right? He actually has this in his obituary. He says in his obituary, right, on entering the two transactions in his ledger, he realized that his pay for this work was less than 1/3 of the annual interest on his $50. and he resolved to make as much money work for him as he could. So he realized that making money work for him was much better than actually working for money. Because let's be honest, if working hard, right, was the secret to success or the secret to building wealth, then any labor worker out there, any waitress, or anybody who works hard for a living would right now be wealthy or will be well off. But that's not it. I was one of those people. I used to work as an accountant for a university, and I used to manage all their money. Every penny that went into that organization and every penny that went out was actually my department's responsibility. And I was very good at my job, right? Because we have, weekly audits and annual audits that I have to make sure that the books were correct. If not, we would get a finding. Well, the thing is that once I assessed my personal situation, I realized that I was working hard to make money, but my personal money was not working hard for me. And that's where compounding interest goes, right? So you working for your money, right? The number of hours in the day limits how much you can earn, right? Because the thing is that, I kind of like to use the Walmart example. If you notice, especially nowadays, Walmart's lines are kind of very long, right? They're very long, and you might be frustrated, we're waiting in line. But if you notice, sometimes lines move faster than others, right? So I guarantee you that the line that's moving fast, right? The person at the register hasn't figured out yet that it doesn't matter if she services 100 people in 1 hour or one person in 1 hour, her hourly pay is not going to change. She's still going to make the same amount of money. But the line that actually, is a little slower, I bet you that person has been working at Walmart for quite a few years. They're already a veteran. And they actually figured out that why would I work hard if I'm still only going to make $15 an hour or $12 an hour, whatever her pay or his pay actually is. So realizing how earning potential on an hourly basis is first of all, the first key. But you working for your money working for you, right? There is no limit on how much you can earn because your money grows independently from your personal efforts, right? You're actually making money while you're sleeping. So let me go a little bit in regards to how that works, right? So John D. Rockefeller had a saying that says, I have ways of making money you know nothing of. Could you imagine, hearing that this is the first time you're actually hearing that quote? That's a pretty elitist quote, right? It's kind of like very far-fetched out there, but that's actually true. There's actually ways of making money some people know nothing of, and that's the reason why they're on this call. They want to learn exactly how money works because they want to better their current financial situation, and the first step is learning. So there's two ways of types of interest, right? There's simple interest and there's compound interest. Which one's better? Well, rather than me telling you which one's better, let me show you which one's better. But first, let's define them, right? So what's simple interest, right? So simple interest is basically you earning interest on the balance alone, right? So the one-time principal of whatever money you deposited, you're making interest every year on just that one amount. Compound interest, right, is as interest making money on interest, right? So simple interest defined here as the farmer who would only pay interest on the original loan amount every single year versus compound interest. Every year, the farmer would owe Rockefeller interest on both the original amount of the loan and all the interest that had accrued from prior years. So what do you think type of interest Rockefeller was requesting from the farmer, right? He learned early on that compound interest is the way to go. So any loan that he lent out, it was on compound interest. So let's look at the difference, right? So simple interest versus compound interest. To see the difference, let's convert Rockefeller's $50 loan, right, which is in today's money roughly about $1,500, and let's imagine that the 14-year-old Rockefeller at the and the farmer agreed on 9% annual interest. And let's say the loan term was about 50 years, okay? So let's look exactly the big difference of how much Rockefeller would have received if he would have been using simple interest and how much he would have received if he was using compound interest, all right? So in simple interest, 50-year timeline, right? 9% interest on a $1,500 loan, which is on simple interest over the course of 50 years, the $1,500 would have grown to $8,250. Not a lot of money, correct? I would agree. But let's use compound interest. You see the huge difference? Because interest is working on top of interest, the potential of growth on money with compound interest is much larger. Think about it as a snowball effect, right? You start up at the top of the hill with a little tiny snowball, right? You roll it down the hill. As it continues to roll, it continues to picking up more and more snow. And the larger it gets, the more snow it picks up. So by the time it gets down to the hill, right, it's going to be a huge ball of snow. This one actually kind of rolls up, right, which is kind of reverse effect, but it still has the same effect where now the money grows much, much larger by using compound interest. So